Somebody asked me to talk a little bit about finding a teacher. Now, the way a teacher or a lama or a spiritual friend is defined within the different traditions varies greatly. For example, in the Theravadan or Hinayana tradition, they don't talk about lamas and gurus. They talk about tutors, maybe mentors, like reading master, house master. The roles that these teachers play are very much like the roles that professors and teachers would play in an academic institution like a university or a high school, for example. And these people help you on practical terms with your education, with your language, with your discipline. And so this notion of a lama or guru doesn't exist in the Hinayana vehicle, calling vehicle. In China, Korea and Japan, they don't really talk about lamas either. What they talk about are spiritual friends. These are kind of spiritual guides, we could say. People will help you along the path. But this notion of lama or guru is something that's kind of particular to the Tibetan Buddhism. We have this notion in the West that we can kind of do it on our own. And I was very much guilty of this when I was younger. I sort of thought I could just take different things from different religious traditions and kind of really create my own spiritual path. It's very common. It's not, I'm not going to say it's absolutely mistaken, but there's a lot of problems associated with that. And essentially, one of the biggest problems is it's very egotistical. One of the biggest problems is that it's very egotistical to assume that oneself alone can tread this very, very difficult and treacherous path. And it is difficult, and it is treacherous for various reasons. If you follow somebody who's a charlatan, who doesn't have good intentions, then you could end up in a really bad place, and some people get really messed up. And likewise, some people, quite frankly, lose their minds, because these profound topics, topics of emptiness and things like that, can be very easily misunderstood. They can be mistaken for nihilism, and nihilism is extremely dangerous. So what is it taught in the scriptures, for example? What is a lama or a teacher? Well, if you follow the teachings of Khongtrul Rinpoche, then he taught a very good text, and it goes into kind of quite a lot of detail about what you're looking for in a teacher. And so there are these kind of 100 qualities that an authentic teacher should have. But these are really difficult things. These are people who have realized the nature of mind, who are basically Buddha, who have clairvoyance, miraculous powers, and all these things. And really, we don't have the kind of karma necessary to meet these kind of teachers. We would like to, and we often convince ourselves that we have. But realistically, that's very difficult to find somebody who has these kind of qualities. So let's say that these 100 kind of qualities you're looking for, clairvoyance, miraculous powers, all these things are a bit too high, a bit too difficult. So then what are we going to look for? Well, Khongtrul Rinpoche, he then says, well, if you can't find that, then they should at least be endowed with 3 qualities. Let's say understanding, love, and ability. This understanding is basically understanding the true nature of reality. So we're looking for a teacher who has experience or realization, but also equally if they understand the true nature of reality. So they have a nominal understanding. They don't have a meditative experience, but they don't have realization, but they understand the true nature of reality unmistakably. Then that's that first quality. Now, based on this first quality of wisdom or understanding, knowing the true nature of reality, then they have love for others. They have love for others because they can see that all the problems that these unrealized beings have, ordinary beings have, are based on them not understanding, not being awakened, not understanding the true nature of reality. And so they have nothing but the desire that others should come to know this too. Come to know this, and through knowing that, be free or liberated from suffering and samsara. So first, there's this understanding, and there's this love that arises from understanding. And the last one, which is ability. And that ability is the ability to have the activities of a Buddha, basically. It is to ripen beings, to help beings on the path. Now, this ability is basically something that arises out of enlightenment. It's called Buddha activity. So ultimately, understanding would be realization. In other words, awakening, real awakening. Not this kind of awakening that most people talk about these days. Like, I was really neurotic and I spoke to somebody and I feel a bit better, I'm awakened. It's not that. It's somebody who is enlightened, as Buddha was enlightened. Ultimately, we're talking about that. And this love is ultimate bodhicitta, or this limitless loving concern for all beings. And ability is this ability to act, to do Buddha activity. But that could also be somebody who has studied well, understands what it's all about, and therefore can teach it to others, and then has compassion, worldly compassion. And then ability could be that they are able to sort of proceed with Dharma-related activities, in teaching others. However you look at it, these three are also very difficult, and it's hard to find people who have them. It's hard to find people who have the requisite intelligence and learning, to understand the true nature of reality, and also they would have had to go through some process themselves to come to that understanding, and that process is hard to find. It's hard to engage with. It doesn't arise for most people these days. And they need, true compassion. They will work for your benefit. They will never use you. Unfortunately, ordinary beings are plagued by self-concern. So being that way, being selfish essentially, even if they're nice people, essentially they're protecting the self, then they won't ever be able to work for your benefit. Wholeheartedly, 100%. And as far as ability is concerned, then more often than not, ability is they just got lucky, or they've just got some good karma, and so they've gathered a few students, but they don't really have the ability to help you become enlightened. So if we can't have a Lama, a teacher with 100 qualities, and finding one with these 3 qualities are extremely difficult, then what does Khongtrul now say? This Jungle Khongtrul Rinpoche then says, well, if you can't find that, then at least find somebody who is better than you. Now this is something we can do. And we say better than you, it's not a value judgment, it's just somebody that you identify as having better education spiritually, who is, compared to yourself, who's more compassionate, more selfless, thinks about others more than you do. And in terms of ability, is somebody who's more capable than you are. And this is something that is achievable for us. We can find these types of people. But largely, finding a teacher has got to do with karma. If you believe in karma, if you believe in past and future lives, then there is this, what is taught to be a spiritual connection. And a lot of the Dharma we engage in is called the Dharma of making a connection. So many people will go to empowerments, or they'll go to see a High Lama, or they'll go to see the Dalai Lama, for example, and they won't really be able to rely on that teacher, get teachings, etc., but they might see them publicly. And we mustn't overlook this. It's still very important, because we need to have made these connections in the past in order to experience these people again in this life. So the person who is our teacher often will be somebody who we've had connections with over many lifetimes. And if you don't believe in many lifetimes, then you can think of it differently. It's this person with whom we are compatible, and also that person, because we're compatible and we think alike, this person will understand us and be able to help us. So again, these topics are very, very profound, very difficult, and you could go into a lot of detail about everything I've said. And the greatest detail you can go into it, of course, is to describe exactly what are all these qualities, how do they come about. But there's not really time to do something like that on a YouTube video. So anyway, I thought I'd just give you a little introduction. Give you something, sort of, what do we call food for thought, something to think about, and think about your own path. And my suggestion also, if you wish to find a teacher, is that you should make aspirations. This is really important. It was important for me. I have great belief in this. By sincerely making aspirations, I hope that I meet a teacher, and also make commitments. You say, well, I need to find a teacher because I'm going to really dedicate myself to meditation and becoming awakened. If you do that, then naturally, these opportunities in the cosmos arise. That's the way I've experienced it anyway. Once you sort of, jump in the deep end, and then things happen. And so make aspirations. Make a commitment. I'm going to dedicate so much time a week to meditation. I'm going to try my hardest to find a teacher. I'm going to do everything I can. That's very important. Another thing you should do is you shouldn't sort of readily accept things. Don't just believe things blindly. Blind faith is important to some extent because you have to believe that there's something better than this world. You have to believe that there's, even if you don't believe in awakening, you have to believe there's something better than this and that you can get there. So you need a certain amount of blind faith, but don't accept everything people say, you know? Like I've said before, if you go somewhere and there's a guy on stage and there's like $70 a ticket, or you've got, you know, you get sort of cheap double rooms at the convention center to participate in this weekend talk about awakening, and then everybody in your left and right is saying, well, I got awakened 8 years ago, I got awakened 5 years ago. I think you should be very skeptical about that. It's not that easy. They're talking about something else. If you're seeking ultimate truth, non-duality and all that sort of stuff, then what you're looking for is much more than these people can offer. So you have to have a certain amount of skepticism, right? You have to have aspiration, make a commitment, have a certain amount of skepticism. Don't accept things readily. But also, in order to prepare the ground, then you should practice virtue. If you believe in karma, cause and effect, this is very important. But even if you don't believe in karma, cause and effect, by having a virtuous mind state, then when positive opportunities arise for you, then something will click. You'll make a decision, for example, oh, maybe I should go to see that teaching. If you have this virtuous mindset and you see virtue being engaged in, you will identify with that. And that opportunity is more likely to open for you. So you're going to make aspirations, make some kind of commitment, you know, and remind yourself of that. Be a little bit skeptical, and also practice virtue. And you should also prepare your mind a little bit, because one day will come when you meet somebody who is a potential teacher, and you'll kind of know, that's what they say. You'll have this feeling. And so you should do as much basic kind of shine, or placement meditation. The purpose of this is not to become awakened, you know, in 5 minutes, you know, focusing on a candle, focusing on the breath. The purpose of this is to prepare your mind, to gain mental concentration, become more astute, this kind of adroitness of your mental faculties, dexterity of the mind. The more you have that, the better, because when you do start relying on somebody, you're going to need that for your practice. And so you need this dexterity of mind. But on top of that, you should study as much as you can. Look into things, but don't focus so much on books and things that modern people write. I mean, there's lots out there, lots of self-help books. I'm not saying they're bad, they're very, very good, but you should see more value in the works of the ancient Panditas. People like Shantideva, Patrul Rinpoche. For example, read Words of My Perfect Teacher, read Way of the Bodhisattva by Shantideva. These sort of texts that were written by enlightened masters of the past. These days, everybody and their dog is writing a book on spirituality. And they're not of no value. But if you're really serious about your practice, then you have limited time. You have to kind of use your time well. And so why not go to the source? For example, study the sutras. If you hear the words of the Buddha and they ring or resonate with you, that's going to really help you a lot. But reading another book about, you know, everything's okay, you're already enlightened, no problem. There's limited benefit you can get out of that, and it's not going to propel you into awakening, right? So have good intentions, you know, make aspirations, make a commitment, be a little bit skeptical. At the same time as being skeptical, you need to be open-minded. And then you need to practice virtue, you need to practice meditation, and you should study. And if you do those things, then, you know, I can almost guarantee you that sometime, probably not too far in the distant future, then you will encounter somebody and you will recognize that person to be your teacher of this life. Okay, well, I'll see you later.